everyone. Welcome to a feast of Filipino American poets. I'm your host, Aileen Cassinetto, and with us today are some of the biggest names and advocates of Filipino American culture and literature. Our theme is Filipino food, that ubiquitous and vital part of our cultural muscle and cultural memory. This reading is also in support of the Filipino food movement, which aims to create a greater awareness of the Filipino culinary arts and advocates on behalf of Filipino restaurants, caterers, chefs, and small business owners. On that note, I'd like to give a special shout out to the Daly City Filipino American Community Feed Project, which fed over 1,000 people with rice and adobo on Mother's Day weekend. And here to talk about the Filipino food movement is Commissioner Al Perez of the San Francisco Entertainment Commission. Welcome, Commissioner Al.
So again, thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to meet so many new friends here. The Filipino food movement was founded in 2014 by 8 passionate volunteers who share a common vision of Philippine cuisine becoming a regular part of American dining experience. FFM is a nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving, promoting, and progressing Filipino cuisine through education and community building. Philippine cuisine is a huge part of our culture, as you guys know, and it's part of our culture and traditions. So we want to pass on these recipes and cooking techniques to the younger generation and to share them with the broader public. With the goal of promoting our talented Filipino-American chefs and restaurant owners, we launched our signature event called Savor Filipino back in August 2014 at the Embarcadero here in San Francisco, with 36 Filipino-American chefs coming from all over the United States, showcasing classic Philippine dishes under 6 pavilions. And we had over 30,000 people who came by to sample our food, which was very, very exciting. Since then, we have collaborated, created partnerships with individuals and organizations to build awareness about Filipino food. Now, our network has grown. Not only are we in the United States, we have chapters in Canada and Australia. We have collaborations with chefs and restaurateurs in the Philippines, Europe, and the Middle East. Our focus has always been on education and celebration. So we believe that Filipino food is diverse, it's personal, and it's inclusive. Currently, we have projects in support of the chefs and food businesses who are severely affected by COVID-19. So there's 3. So first is this called Support Filipino Takeout. It's an initiative to rally our community to support local Filipino restaurants and food businesses who are struggling during these very difficult times. One of our cultural values is something called bayanihan. Its root word is bayan, means nation or community. Let that be a reminder, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish together. So we want to invite everyone to help keep Filipino restaurants open. So treat yourselves to a day of takeout and support Filipino takeout. You can look at our regional directory of Filipino restaurants who are open for takeout at our website at filipinofoodmovement.org. Our next project is called Culinaria Live. So in our culture, food plays a central role. With food, we celebrate, we gather, and we bond. Food is our language of love. That's how we communicate and express our love to each other. So there's never been a time that adobo could not comfort, or pancit could not celebrate an event, or at lugaw could not heal. So with Culinaria Live, we invite Filipino chefs from around the country to teach us their favorite Filipino dishes. So it's every Thursday from 12 noon to 1 o'clock. We also publish the ingredients ahead of time so you can kind of cook along with the chefs. So you're not just watching them, you can kind of learn along and learn and cook with the chefs. So it's really fun. So that's on Facebook Live from our Facebook page, Filipino Food Movement. And then lastly, our third project that's coming up in June next month, it's called Savor Filipino Summit. It's a virtual conference to bring the Filipino food community together to discuss what's the current landscape and where do we go from here. So we hope to have a conversation with Filipino restaurant owners, entrepreneurs, and how to pivot their business models Some of them have changed their menu to a more robust takeout menu. Pinoy Heritage has pivoted from being a pop-up to delivering meal kits. So you get the ingredients, all you have to do is chop up the vegetables, put in the pot, and read the directions. And 7 Mile House Restaurant here in San Francisco, Brisbane, has offered produce in addition to takeout. So there's your basic ingredients for your pantry. It's a one-stop shop you can get with your takeout. So a lot of restaurants are really making this pivot now to the new normal. So this conference, a virtual summit, we hope to bring all these ideas together to really help our community to move forward and be more successful. So I just want to give a quick shout out to my fellow committee members, Sonia Dellen, Kisa Ocampo, Wendy Conady, Mitzi Monzano, and Jennifer Ferguson for all their hard work and bringing all these projects together. So lastly, as I wrap, I'd like to invite everyone to join the Filipino food movement by going to our website, www.filipinofoodmovement.org. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Al, for all you do for all our communities. Thank you so much. And now, to pay homage to Filipino food via poetry, it is my great pleasure to introduce our amazing poets. Our first reader is Melinda Luisa de Jesús, Associate Professor and former Chair of Diversity Studies at California College of the Arts. She writes and teaches about Filipinx American cultural production, girl culture, monsters, and race ethnicity. Melinda was awarded the 2018 to 2019 Muriel Gold Senior Visiting Professorship at McGill University in Montreal. Welcome, Melinda.
Hello, can you guys hear me okay? I'm here with my daughter, Malaya, who's gonna help me do some reading, but she's eating a piece of bread right now. Let's see, what would you want to know about me? Back in 2005, I edited Pinay Power, which was the first anthology of Filipino American feminisms. And then in early 2018, Aileen published my first volume of poetry. So it's kind of the mode that I'm in right now. A Baroque mezzo-soprano and a mom, and sometime administrator. I'm really into letterpress, which is what I did on my sabbatical. So if you can see this, this is a piece that I did. So that's the name of my press, Late Night Letterpress. And I'm going to be showing some of the letterpress and poetry that I did with my children for a project that was commissioned by Aileen for her, what's it called? Minotage Press, Little Tiny Books. So I'm going to read a bunch of different poems. Thanks for the invite, Aileen. It just made me think about so many things. I also want to give a shout out in terms of food studies, in terms of Asian American studies, the big names that I had been doing, our food scholars began with Don Mabalan, of course, Martin Manalansan, and Anita Manur doing some really important writing about 10 to 15 years ago. So this is a really well-established field within ethnic studies right now. Right now at CCA, we have Sita Baumik, who works in the community, and she does this really amazing class called Taste of Resistance, which is probably one of the most popular diversity studies classes, and it's all about food justice here in the Bay Area. So her students just published this amazing zine, and I'll try to add it to this to this chat so you can see it. All right, so this is the first poem, and thanks, Aileen, made me think about all my relationships with food and my culture. So the first one, I put it on Facebook. It's called basically Heaven. Bibinka from Cendrillon, New York City, 2005 in June. What is heaven? Bibinka, fresh from Cendrillon's oven. All of it, mine. That was important to me because they made me my own bibinka to order. I'm the middle child of 7, and I always had to share everything with my siblings. So having my own bibinka was a really big deal. And at the time when that happened, I was also pregnant with my first kid. So I was like, yes, I can completely eat this thing all by myself. and my baby. It was really excellent. I wrote another really small poem last night, thinking about my time in Montreal. And I don't think I'd had as much Filipino food in my entire life as I did for the 6.5 weeks that I was in Montreal. I could not believe what great food there is. And who knew, in Pinoyville, right there around McGill, and Côte des Neiges. So this one was for my son Stinson, who was 13 at the time, and it's called Turon. It's also a Hainaku. Stop it, Malaya. Okay. Turon. Do not touch my Turon, son. Sometimes mom's love has a limit. So I had ordered a box of 10 and he wanted to eat like half of them. I was like, no, no. We need to share these with the rest of the family. Okay. And my daughter is not paying attention. Why? Did you want to read your poem?
No.
All right, she's going to play with the cats then, so I'll just go on. She actually wrote a poem last night, really quick hainaku, that says, so much food I could eat, but I shouldn't. I don't want a stomach ache. And I can't read that. I can't read this last line, Malaya. I can't read your last line. Okay, I'll let her finish that.
It doesn't stop me though.
But it doesn't stop me though. So sorry about that.
No, it doesn't stop me though.
Can I
You
just
don't want to
go
be a
on?
pineapple.
Okay. This is a series of poems about mangoes, but I just want to show my sons. So Stinny's not an artist. He's a skateboarder right now and a singer. So he actually drew this image of Spam. And this is part of the 3 by 3 by 3 inch letterpress books that I made for Aileen Tabios, you can see here. And Stinson actually did this illustration of his poem. And then I hand bound each of these. So if you're interested in purchasing one of these cute little books, there's 4 in the set. Let me know. They're also on my Etsy site. It's under Penmanology. So check it out. So this one's called Spam. Written and illustrated by Stinson Zacarias de Jesus Tinsman, who was about 13 at this time. Spam. Edible gout, 100% tasty, but not responsible for your death. Okay, so this is a series of poems about mangoes that really made me think about my parents and my kids because we eat way too many mangoes in this house. Here's the first one. There is no better mango than the Philippine mango, my mom proclaimed. Mouths stuffed with sunshine. We agree. Number 2. Visit to Yosemite in June 1995. This is the only time that I was able to get my dad to stop working as an engineer and come to California, where I received my PhD. It's the only reason he came out to visit. And we went, he actually took some time off so we could go visit Yosemite. So this was a memory from then.
Don't eat my bread.
Mom speared my dad's mango half gleefully, unable to contain her joy. Daddy humoring her. I think of my parents, deprived of their tropical childhood staples, in deepest Pennsylvania, making do with apples and unripe bananas. The bounty of this California summer is their delight. Mango juice dripping from their fingers, they exclaim again and again, so good, ang sarap. And this is the last one. Interestingly, I wrote this poem in around 1982, and I didn't really, I think, understand the full meaning of it until I was much older. This is called Mango Dancer, and Malaya illustrated this for my little book.
No, it's so bad.
Stop.
No, it's so bad. I did it like a year ago.
If you can see.
It's really
That's supposed to be her auntie Nikki, my baby sister. So if you want to just see the whole inside.
Oh, I got you.
Mango Dancer. You, funny face, little sis, listen to that sax. In the kitchen, mom and dad, tango cheek to cheek. Put down your dish rag, bubbles in your hair, and tango with that mango, cheek to cheek. I'll just show you the picture one more time.
That's really bad.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melinda and Stinson and Malaya. Thank you, Melinda, always for your fierce and empowered poetry. Our next reader is none other than Vince Gotera, the editor of the North American Review from 2000 to 2016 and professor of English at the University of Northern Iowa. His honors include a fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts, an Academy of American Poets Prize, a Mary Roberts Rinehart Award in Poetry, and a Global Filipino Literary Award in Poetry. Vince was born and raised in San Francisco and lived in the Philippines for part of his childhood and is currently based in Waterloo, Iowa. Welcome, Vince.
Thank you, Aileen. I was looking through my poems that maybe had to do with food, and I kept finding little snippets. Here's a poem about my aunt, my Aunt Consuelo, my mom's sister, and just a little excerpt. Tia Chuling shook me awake at 6:30, then shuffled into the kitchenette to make me breakfast, chunks of longanisa sausage on fried rice, sinangag, and runny eggs. In the stillness of early morning, she told me, "You look a lot like your mom. Shave off that mustache." That's a much, much longer poem. I found a couple of poems that are really quite old, maybe 30 some years old, about my grandmother that we called Nanay, not Lola, Nanay. And this is, she used to make coffee with milk and sugar in it. I don't know if that's a Filipino thing or if it's if it was just our family, but this is a poem about that. Nanay. Pouring creamy swirls into a cup of black coffee, I dipped and stirred twice. Too sweet. When I was 6, my grandmother Nanay made her coffee that way. Sugar and milk mixed in before brewing. It poured from the pot, a lovely amber. Let it stand a while, each sip sweeter. But black coffee now, an acquired taste, needs to get to know you. Take it slow, let it sit, settle. Nanay too was like that. Tatay was never deer or honey. Gotera, she called him, ours rasping like sharks in her throat. Once I got up and my windows, the sidewalk, the Captain Kangaroo poster on my wall were all leaning 12 degrees to the left. Trees and dogs, hydrants and houses threatened to slide down the horizon. Just a stiff neck, the doctor said. Nanay hardly spoke a word to me then, even hello and goodbye. But she came over 9 days straight to stretch and massage my neck till I thought my eyes would explode. After each time, we sat in an easy chair, I in Nanay's lap, she humming. Before the war, my grandmother sold fish in Pasig City, and so this is a poem about that. There are, for those of you who may be watching and don't know seafood words, there are a lot of Filipino or Tagalog seafood words in here. Selling fish. The sky purple as ube jam. 2 hours before the sun awakes in the Philippine Sea, Nanay walks to the beach where fishermen are landing. My father, 12 years old, who has come along this morning, carries her baskets. By sunrise, they are set up under an awning of banana leaves at market, and she is calling, "Bangus, lapu-lapu." "Good morning, Manang Lourdes. I have fresh sap-sap over here. That one there was swimming in Manila Bay just before dawn." My father is dozing off, and she taps him on the head with a wooden spoon. "Oy, Martin, wrap up that fish for Manang." Her voice would become rough and gravelly from calling, "Alimango, hipon, talaba, supo." Later that evening, she and my father carry their baskets through the streets. "Of course the bangus is fresh," Nanay tells Aleng Natu, leaning out her window. "Look at the eyes, bright as a pearl." Digging a thumb under the gill, she says, "Look at that, still red." My father can see himself poised by the river, his fighting kite dancing on air. Here's a poem about growing up in San Francisco, where we used to go crabbing, and that would be with a net, a crab net, and that's described in the poem. And it's also, well, I'll just quit talking, just read the poem. All right. This is called Pacific Crossing. The pier, a great concrete semicircle, stretched into San Francisco Bay like a father's arm around a daughter. On Sundays, we would venture on that pier, Mama in her broad straw hat, a country woman in some rice paddy on Luzon. In his lucky lime green short-sleeved shirt checked by orange pinstripes, Papa would heft the net. I would lean over the rail, watch the two steel hoops, the smaller within the larger, crisscrossed by heavy twine in diamond shapes, loft out over the dark water and sink in a green froth. A small wire cage nestled in the center of the hoops, containing chunks of raw meat. Papa would say, best bait is porterhouse. Crabs really go for that. My dad was really proud that he would use steak for bait. Sometimes he would let me pull the net up, the rope slimy and tight in my small hands, and then the skitter and scuttle of claws on the wooden deck of the pier. Later at home, I would play the radio loud, hide that same skitter on the sides of the large enamel white Dutch oven, concentrate instead on the sweetness I knew would come. One of those Sunday evenings, I dropped in at my friend Peter Van Ryan's house. Dinner had just been served, and the family rule was all the neighborhood kids had to leave. But I didn't. There was Pete's father, like some patriarch from a Norman Rockwell painting, poising his carving knife above the shell, huge and bountiful, of a red king crab. I said, wait. Their heads swiveled toward me in shock as if I'd screamed a curse word out. Old Peter, the daughter Wilhelmina, his sons, Paul, Bruno, Guido, my friend Pete, the mom whose given name I never knew, a good immigrant family. The heirs of European culture, I always thought, these direct descendants of Rembrandt. I said, wait. And then I shared the secret passwords to being a Filipino. Here is where you dig your fingernails in to pry the top shell off. You suck this green and orange jelly, the fat of the crab. This flap on the underside tells if it's male or female, pointed and skinny, or round like a teardrop. Here's how you twist off legs, pincers. Crack and suck the littlest ones. Grip it here and here, then break the body into the whitest, sweetest meat. I have been writing a novella in poems about two aswang. I don't know who all's watching here, but the aswang are kind of a multi-purpose monster in the Philippines with many different kinds and versions, vampires and shapeshifters and ghouls. And so in my novella, there are two aswang. One is a manananggal, who's a kind of vampire, too complicated to explain now, but well, I had to explain something for the poem, which is that the manananggal, the word tanggal means to remove or to separate, and the manananggal is a woman that can separate the top half of her body, and it flies off into the night and does whatever the manananggal does at night. Some of you know, and then leaves her legs there, and usually there's a family member or someone who's in charge of guarding those legs. Well, the two lovers, one is Clara, she's the manananggal, and then Santiago, Tiago is a were-dog. We don't have werewolves in the Philippines because we don't have wolves, but we have were-dogs and were-pigs and were-cats and, all kinds of shape-shifting monsters. So this is Santiago talking about his love for Clara in terms of the mango. So he says, there is no fruit I love more than the mango. Taut skin, yellow and red, the blushing cheek of a maiden, the soft curve, the shy smile on my girl's sensuous mouth, a slow tango smoldering in her eyes. The mango's sleek flesh, sweet and fragrant as her bosom. While Clara's away these summer nights, the heavens cloudless and clear, moonlight filled, where she wheels in air, she leaves me with her hips, two cheeks like shapely fruits, the moon's curvy crescent, firm mango handfuls. And the last poem is First Mango, which I can't find now. Hang on a second. Which is a poem for Mary Ann. I was fortunate recently to have this poem be invited by, and I've forgotten the name of this dance company in San Francisco, and they included it in a show. And so someone was singing my poem, which was really odd and very, very cool at the same time. And then people were dancing. I don't know if anyone saw that, that show. It was a Filipino dance company. First Mango for Mary Ann. Remember that June before our wedding we spent in San Francisco? That first morning you woke to my brother in silver sequins singing like Diana Ross. These are all true stories, by the way. To my brother in silver sequins singing like Diana Ross. What must have gone through your mind? What kind of people were you marrying into? My father who laughed a lot but was schizophrenic. My stepmom who tried, they say, to stab him in the back with scissors. Love may be blind, but not stone blind. Then one Sunday we bought at the corner market one perfectly ripened red gold mango. How carefully I slit the skin with my penknife, rivers of yellow juice, the furry seed, then sliced the golden half moons into quadrangles, open petals. Your first bite of our sweet life. Thank you.
Brilliant as ever. Thank you, Vince. Thank you so much. Such a novel way to present Filipino culture in a poem. Thank you so much. Now it's my honor to introduce Luisa A. Igloria, co-winner of the 2019 Crab Orchard Poetry Competition for Maps for Migrants and Ghosts, forthcoming September 2020 from Southern Illinois University Press. Her awards include the May Swenson Prize and the Resurgence Poetry Prize, the world's first major eco-poetry award. Luisa is a Louis I. Jaffe Professor and University Professor of English and Creative Writing in the MFA program at Old Dominion University. Luisa, congratulations on your new book and welcome.
Thank you so much, Aileen. And I want to thank my Kapwa poets who have gathered here this afternoon to address poems on food and Filipino culture. I just want to say briefly that I was born in Makati, but from the age of 2, I was raised in Baguio, which is up north. And so I grew up in a mostly Ilocano household. And every memory that I have of my childhood probably has something to do with food and making food and eating food. So what I understand of food in Filipino culture is that it is more than a means to nourish the body, and that appetite or hunger is an expression of more than the need to satisfy physical hunger. So whenever we say nagugutom ako, I guess we can also mean those deeper cravings that food alone cannot satisfy. So it sets up this whole Kabbalistic, almost mystical chain of longing that's capable of transporting us to our childhood or any other time or place in our lives that houses a powerful memory. And I also want to add a little side note that I was so grateful to be taught by Doreen Fernandez when I was doing my graduate program, my MA in Literature in Ateneo before I came to the US. So I thought I'd read from a short gathering of poems, a selection from earlier works as well as the new book that's coming out this September. So I want to begin with a poem from an earlier book called Encanto, which was published in the Philippines in 1994 by Anvil. And as I was saying, food is this very complicated thing. It's not just sweet or satisfying. It's also so much more than that. So the epigraph is from Barbara Kingsolver, We Hunger for Confession. And it is a poem that houses stories that were told by my mother or my mothers. Long story for another day. But this poem is called Secrets. It is in the girls' school. In the photograph, both of you are dressed as men. Stiff collars, hair slicked back with brilliantine, posing before the dance called the rigodon. Only your eyebrows plucked high and heavily outlined give you away. Smiling, the whole front row spreads pleats of embroidered gowns, the scent of wisteria. I can believe your waist was size 19. Can believe your other transformations. Here you are in tulle, high heels white, hairstyle bouffant, eating cake and marrying my father. But tell me again of the wedding night, if it was really your mother-in-law who planted her crone's body between yours and his on the wooden bed. Tell me why the passage I finally broke from months or years later led to your sister, why it was she that tended the stove fires and where I learned to make the soup of words. And then you must tell how she returned, the shadow with coal black eyes in the first picture, whose name now is never spoken. Intimate, more compelling than the rat poison she drank at our kitchen table with unsweetened coffee. She is still here, a tiny nail scratching on the back door of my brain, gnawing on my heap of questions. So I'm going to progress forward. This is one of the poems in Maps for Migrants and Ghosts, which is coming out from Southern Illinois University Press in September 2020. And if you go to SIU Press's website, there is a pre-order link now and a couple of specials. So thank you for your support in advance. This poem is called Sparrow Palace. And I just want to preface this briefly by saying, just as in lots of different cultures in Southeast Asia, sometimes people will build spirit houses and put them in front of their house yard as a place where spirits can come and go or rest on their journey. And in places like Turkey, there are miniature bird palaces that are made for birds. It's not of any practical use, but there is also an aesthetic function. It feeds us in a different way. So this poem is called Sparrow Palace. I return to that chipped edifice shaped like a cake topper, its tiny doors leading to drafty corridors and abandoned rooms, elaborate lattice work, a gnawed confection crumbling in the sun. In that moldy tower, what did I think I was, if not a kind of prisoner of love? I wore my miniature shrouds and practiced tapping Morse code on the walls until father caught me, or finally I tired of walking labyrinths into the floorboards. Night after night, from one of the rooms I heard mother sing last song without irony, cupping her hand to her breast. She kept singing even when I refused to accompany her. In summer, she divided seeds from yellow pods in the green jackfruit's hollow, but its flesh was forbidden, for fear my body would send ripe streamers of scent too early in the world. Instead, I sat popping stale bits of roasted corn into my mouth, occasionally tossing some to pigeons in the courtyard. In those days, the doors of my chest had not yet swung open. My cheeks had not been daubed with a paste of water and my own first blood. There wasn't yet a parapet on whose edge a flickering thought could sharpen into hunger with a body with a pair of wings. So there's a lot of food taboos, and I think I caught some of that when I was just on that cusp of puberty. And you know, when you start menstruating, all of a sudden you can't eat certain foods, and like, why? Why not? I love jackfruit, but no, the smell is like, no. So whatever. All right, so I'm gonna read the title poem from Maps for Migrants and Ghosts. And there is an epigraph from the poet James A.H. White. It's from his poem Immigratory Patterns. And the epigraph goes, ask me where I'm from, and I may point at the dirt as if it were the embodiment of all things. So Maps for Migrants and Ghosts. Are there little fish swimming in jars of brine in the cupboard? Are there pickled moons and stars, curtains of smoke after a fireworks festival when dancers ripple into the streets to show off their ink? In that other world, we wait for tinny bell chime and scrape a foot pedal, the call of the scissors grinder widening through sleepy towns. Heat rising from the heads of school children at 3 in the afternoon, yeasty like bread. The stronger the scent, the better. Even the gods and ancestors should thrive in other places, though they don't understand the need for gendered pronouns. They resent filling out forms which could be used to make claims for erasing their existence. Oh, pity you poor collectors of blunt throwaway instruments. Penitents inch toward the river, the expert thwack of bamboo whips calling forth the blood. There are questions that could never be answered. Like stars, at the heart of every place a central note is buried. Say anise, say achuete oil, say hair singed off the belly of a thrashing pig. And I'll read one last short poem from my book Night Willow from Phoenicia Publishing in Montreal. And that is a book of all prose poems. So this is a prose poem. And I'll close with this, and thank you again, Aileen. So this poem is called Foolish. When the tide was low, I walked and loved the water and the sugary sand. When it was high, I stayed my careful distance and fingered threads, turned pages, steeped tea, listened to the murmur of voices in public rooms. They came and went, as if there were no tomorrow. I loved the varied colors of their customs, their buttonholes and hatbands, the air suffused with smells of tobacco, leaf, or orange or lavender. I loved their dark heels of stacked wood, their calves wrapped in supple leather. Wind sped through the trees, which shed their leaves then budded as the season turned. Once, flying in, as evening broke and the cities below filled out their grids with light, I watched as a couple kissed and kissed in their airplane seats. They sank into each other as if the air were tasteless, as if the sky was lackluster, as if their need for delirium was the color of the sun as it seized, then disappeared at the rim of the sea. I wish you were foolish with me like that. I wish you'd come to me as if I were the last cool drink of water forever and forever in the world. Thank you.
That was powerful and polished and truly stunning. Thank you, Luisa. Last but not least, please welcome Tony Robles, the people's poet. Tony was born in San Francisco and is the nephew of Filipino-American poet, historian, and social justice activist Al Robles. He was a shortlist nominee for Poet Laureate of San Francisco in 2017 and was awarded the San Francisco Arts Commission Individual Literary Artist Grant in 2018. Tony is currently based in North Carolina and was recently named the 2020 Carl Sandburg Writer in Residence. Welcome, Tony.
Hi, and some really wonderful, wonderful poetry. I have to really agree with what Al Perez said at the beginning, that food is our language of love. I must say, though, after listening to Vince's poem, it really brought me back, because I used to go out with my pop over at Fort Mason. We used to go crabbing, but I feel very, very, I feel very cheap, actually. And I'll tell you why, because, you know, our bait was chicken wings. It was never steak. So you know, if I ever go again, I need to up it. You know what I mean? You know, steak as bait. But anyway, I want to read a poem about San Francisco. You know, being from the city, you know, there was always Filipino food, but there was always Mexican food, and there was always Chinese food. There was always that Frisco mix. So that became kind of like a soul medicine, and this is what the soul medicine tasted like to me. Barbecue and cornbread and greens made by black hands, and adobo and rice eaten with thick black fingers, a handwritten love note with a number 2 pencil, a street sax, or for Vince, guitar, blowing colors across the sky, tortillas and rice and beans and abuelita's voices rising through rooftops, murals on our skin, wet with our stories, our lives, our revolution, paleteros pushing cool, cool, cool flavors that paint the tongue a picture of community, finger-painted portraits of our dreams, grandpa with a wrinkled racing form, transistor radio broadcasting voices of spirits dancing, splashing like flowers in the throats of babies, wrinkled photos and longhand notes written illegibly legible on palm lines of leaves, a belly full of pork noodle soup on Kearny Street, familiar faces on Frisco streets, like Terry on the corner of 7th Street selling slow jam CDs, Delphonics, Isley Brothers, The Dramatics, Nella planting collard greens and kale and everything that is good, her brown Filipino hands offering her gifts from the soil of the Tenderloin, stories written in Russian rye bread at the Moscow Bakery on Geary Street, rice noodles whipping around the block after block of the Tenderloin, dreams fermenting on the corner of Turk and Larkin, black voices that never die, Samoan church food passed from hand to hand, elder to child, heart to heart, sacks filled with Chinese vegetables, fish eyes looking through tanks as rivers flow down Chinatown streets, my grandmother's cane that kept our unstable world stable as she walked to and from St. Patrick's Church on Mission Street. Mission Street palm trees that tell us home isn't too far and can be heard in the conga drum that dreams of freedom from the pawn shop. Foghorns moaning, wetness as the sun breaks through for the first time over and over again in my city. So that's a little bit of food. You know, there was a thing here. I got a job working at a deli at one of the supermarkets here, and you know, I had my uniform on, and a lady came up to me, and I was slicing cheese and cold cuts, I said, what can I do for you, ma'am? She says, I want white American. I said, you know, it's like she didn't even have a MAGA hat on, so it kind of caught me by surprise. So this is called White American, a deli counter encounter. Let's see, the customer approaches the counter. She looks as if she has had more than her share of trips to the makeup counter. I offer her a hello to go with my brown face. Working the deli counter, slicing turkey, ham, salami, pastrami, chicken, and cheese, scooping potato salad, coleslaw, and ambrosia. I want white American, she says, a half pound. White American, I ask. Cheese, she replies. I search the meat case. I search and come upon it. White American cheese. I had been somewhat familiar with the government variety, a big block with an orange tint. I didn't know white American cheese existed, and I am thankful for the extended education that I'm receiving from the deli that employs me. I slice that block of cheese, white American, wrap it with my brown hands in plastic, to go with the words, thank you, come again. You know, when you're at the deli, man, you got to do your thing. Anyway, okay, just maybe two short ones. Anybody here like bologna? Okay, well, this is a poem called Bologna. Learning to listen, learning to listen, listening to learn, which begs the question, do you live to eat or do you eat to live? Working the deli, slicing meat, you listen. Some folks like a thin slice, others very thin, while others like a sandwich cut and others a dinner cut. The other day, a guy came in and ordered a pound of Lebanon bologna. I didn't know such bologna existed. I've been told it's from the other Lebanon in Pennsylvania. You learn to listen to what people want. Much bologna exists. Beef, tofu, turkey, garlic. Balloon bologna, political bologna, poetic bologna, of which you have been given an extra slice. Now, is there anything else I can get you? And let me just read two more, and then I'll be on my merry way. I think Vince, you're kind of a musicologist, right? You know a lot about music, right? I was working at a restaurant here part-time, and they used to have the radio on all the time. And Elvis is big down here. They have like, one Elvis song a day on WTZQ radio. And there was one song during my work shift. It was called When My Blue Moon Turns to Gold Again. And it was a song that was made popular by the late Hank Snow, who was a huge country and western singer. But when Elvis did it, it was more upbeat. But anyway, this is called The Loft. It's the name of the restaurant. In the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, far away from blue Hawaii, the voice of Elvis comes through the speakers as you work your first day in the kitchen. And Elvis's voice sounds a little like this. Well, when my blue moon turns to gold again. Through a hiss of static, the boss says, slice the potatoes while chomping quickly on a barbecued rib. The potatoes sit on the counter like shapeless Buddhas. One by one, you put them through the slicer. Fresh chips to go with burgers. The thinly sliced potatoes resemble tongues submerged in slightly murky water. Next are the onions, purple, cutting the tops and running through the slicer. Plum-colored tears well up in your eyes. The cheese is next, a cut above the government variety, and you shave slices from that block of orange. tears still in your eyes, wondering if you'll lose a finger or hand in the slicer. How would you write poems? On the shelves above are thyme, basil, oregano, balsamic vinegar, soy sauce, chopped scallions, chili flakes, Dijon mustard, sesame seed oil, Worcestershire sauce, and a bottle of 4 Monks cooking sherry. Close by sits some white wine in a cardboard box, a spout on the front. You look for a dimple of moon in the darkening sky while contemplating turning that spout and letting it fall into your gaping mouth. Elvis's voice fades as you cut and slice with the discipline of a monk. And this will be the last one. Let me see. We went to Banaue, up in the northern part of the Philippines, to do a movie called the Al Robles Express. It was a documentary on my late uncle. And I was with Oscar Peñaranda and Lou Sakia on the trip. And Lou said that when he was going to school that, you know, the academics would portray Filipino American literature. They would describe it in a term called incoherent, right? Not fully developed. And there was a dispute, there was a matter between Oscar and Lou as to what the proper pronunciation of incoherent actually was. So this is a poem, it's called Incoherent. It's for Lou and Oscar. Let's see, in Banaue, in a hotel, in a rice terrace, we have lived a bit, some reaching Manong stage. But somehow the seedlings inside are ready to sprout into laughter, into memory, into debate. And we discussed the meaning of the word inchoate. How does one pronounce such a word? Lou pronounces it with an emphasis on the CH, as in lechon. Oscar pronounces it the way of the dictionary, as inchoate or inchoate. Inchoate, definition, just begun and not so fully developed, which was how a literary critic of note described Filipino literature, always in its embryonic balut-like stage. And we are in Banaue walking the rice terraces that were developed over thousands of years. We watch those terraces, seeing the terrain, our balance fully developed on the streets of America, with potholes and cracks that we somehow learned to navigate until it became second nature. And we walk those terraces with a grace and style that is ours to claim. Hardly inchoate, developing further our feelings and words that we define, one rice terrace step at a time. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Tony, for your always relevant and necessary poetry.
It's still inchoate, you know.
Since it's a rare occasion that I have all four of you in one event, I have a couple of quick questions. First is, for food historian Doreen Fernandez, food offered an opportunity for self-knowledge that was grounded in immediate experience, embodied knowledge, and personal and collective memory. Does it also apply to your poetics? How much of your poetics is about cultural memory? Let's start with Tony.
The poem, you know, it's like, well, like what Al said at the very beginning, food is the language of love. And, you know, when you're writing, the purpose that it takes off from is that, you know, we're writing for the betterment of our people that are struggling in a lot of different ways. They might be struggling at whatever degree, and we're offering a bit of light, a bit of hope, regardless of what the struggle. It might be a small struggle or a big one. You know, we're like cooks. You know, poets and writers. We're like cooks, but we're also excavators. You know, we go deep beneath the surface. So, you know, we're not afraid to go down there and dig. And then if we hit a rock, you know, we take a sledgehammer and we break it, you know. But at the same time, we're also sifters. You know, we're sifting through a lot of stuff, and we're trying to get to that fine core and essence of who we are. So, yeah.
What about you, Luisa?
Just forgot that I have to unmute. Yeah, the same way. I think I like the words that I've heard used by you, Aileen, and also Tony. The idea of embodying experience, embodying memory. That's what we do when we try to express something that's difficult to articulate. And I think I find that I reach for the same kind of things when I'm writing, and it's akin to almost like, you know, when I eat something and I remember a very memorable dish, and I try to replicate the creation of that in my own kitchen, and you don't have the recipe, but then you have this sort of like thing encoded on your tongue, and that works with your memory. So it's a whole, you know, system of things that are working together, not just with language, but with your whole apparatus, you know, your senses, your emotions, your memories, your intellect are all involved. The whole chemistry of creation is very much akin to what we do when we cook, when we eat, when we remember things that we like the taste of. So I think that also is something that is expressed in our aesthetics or poetics. Of course, we use a different vocabulary for poetry or for literature, but I think the impulses are motivated by the same fires, by the same flames, and by the same emptiness. Like, what can fill this thing that I long for so much? And with the poem, language is always this very like intangible like thing, and the poem itself lives on that ledge of ineffability, but we try to harness that in the fire of the poem, in the working, the melding of the poem with language.
So true.
Yes.
So true. Vince?
Aileen, sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Well, I don't tend to be very theoretical about my work. I guess I could just say that it's really that the poems have become over the years a kind of index or a kind of atlas, you know, to my life and to things I know. I recently wrote a poem about my father had an aunt. I'm sorry, my aunt, my father's sister, was an invalid and was bedridden, and she was kind of a mysterious, you know, almost like Emily Dickinson figure, always in her bedroom, you know. And I was writing about that, and I mentioned in the recent poem from a couple of weeks ago that I didn't know if she was really ill. And then looking for food poems in my repertoire, I found an old poem where it talks about her having TB, you know, and I'd completely forgotten that, you know. And so the poems are a kind of map, you know, a kind of just of everything that maybe I once knew that I don't know anymore.
Right. What about you, Melinda?
Oh man, so much to say. I really love what everyone has already said. I think in terms of the larger body of my work, which is not poetry, it's mostly theory, and also definitely in terms of Pinoy Power, putting that volume together, 23 articles by Filipinas in the diaspora, it was such an example to me of halo halo, and just this idea of, in terms of creating a Filipina American studies, you know, what is the recipe for that? And as you know, Tony, I gotta thank you so much for that shout out to Lebanon bologna, because I'm from Pennsylvania. That was my favorite sausage, not the summer sausage, that one, because it's sweet. When I was at Girl Scout camp in the Poconos, we used to stick it on a stick and then shove it in the fire. It was awesome. You could eat it with a marshmallow.
The closest thing I ever came to that was Kato salami, and Lebanon was better. It's better than Kato salami.
You got to try it, man. It's really good. It's very Pennsylvanian. So just in terms of getting back to what you were asking, Aileen, I think of my own experience as a Pinay. I didn't even have that word until I went to graduate school, you know, because I'm from Pennsylvania. We didn't have these terms. It was very difficult to think of myself as a Filipina, as a Pinay. So coming into that and making space for other Filipinas like me, especially those of us from the East Coast who were not raised in a Filipino-American community, I'm really jealous of my kids about all the stuff they get here, the Filipino dance troupe they're in. I mean, all the experiences, the folks they get to meet, the curriculum that they have. So just making a wider space for those of us who were maybe feeling maybe 1/10 Filipino, because that's how we were raised wherever we were in the United States, is just really important for me. And I think food is just a really, it's, you know, smell and taste are so integral to our experiences from childhood. It just brings us immediately to the same place. Like when I say garlic fried rice, everybody knows what I'm talking about. You know, I was just printing out a recipe for polvoron because I missed making those with my mom. So just, and being able to share this little bit of culture, like putting it on a plate and saying, here, try, this is where I'm from. You know, this is what is valuable to my family, and I want to share it with you. I just think that's just a really beautiful thing. And in this crazy political moment in this pandemic, to be able to do that, and also to, I think, feed our souls and our spirits as we're doing here in community through Zoom is really awesome. So I'm just really thankful for everybody being here, and your poems are blowing me away. So I can't wait to read all this. So Aileen, is it possible for us to put these somewhere? Because I'm a real visual learner. I would love to read these. Thank you.
I will do that. Lastly, can you tell me about forthcoming books or projects? Start with Melinda.
I am so far behind in my writing. I just finished handing my grades in yesterday. Let's see. I have a very, very, very late article on Crushed by Trinidad Escobar that I'm working on. I also have a piece about Pinay Power's, the importance of Gloria Anzaldua's work to Pinay Power in terms of the theoretical framing for that 15 years ago. Let's see, I'm doing more letterpress this summer. And sadly, I can't sing anymore. I'm a Baroque mezzo-soprano, but so my choir is like out of commission because that's a really horrible way to transfer COVID. So probably doing some private voice. But that's about finishing those 2 articles is pretty much the scope of my summer. And a larger project, just working on combining all my essays into one place. So that's a larger project for a couple of years down the road. But that's about it.
Awesome. Vince?
Yes, Tony, before I answer your question, Tony, I'm going to solve your problem, man. It's pronounced incoate. So, Aileen, I'm such a bad business person. You know, I have a book that came out a year ago called The Coolest Month, if anyone wants to look for it. I have been, since 2012, I've been doing NaPoWriMo, you know, writing a poem a day. And last year I thought, man, I must have a couple hundred poems from that. I know this doesn't hold a candle to Luisa's output, but because Luisa's been doing that for years. But I mean, not just in April. But anyway, so that the coolest month are poems, are 30 poems. It's a chapbook of 30 poems, each that were written on a particular day in April over the last 8 years. And that was a fun project to do. I mentioned that I'm writing the novella in poems, the Aswang novella. That's getting close. I can see the end. You know, I wrote it really not in order. I've been writing parts of the narrative, just jumping around in the story, and I didn't really know what the story was. You know, so I think I figured out how to finish it. I was fallow for about a year, stuck with, you know, how to get past a certain point in the story. I also just finished a project with an MFA classmate, so this is going back 30 plus years, Lee Harlan Behan. We just wrote a chapbook called Coronavirus, Coronavirus. And it's some of you probably know the Corona form, which is a crown of sonnets, interlinked sonnets or chained chain sonnets. And so over a number of days, the last couple of weeks, we've been exchanging poems on COVID. And so I just sent that out to a publisher yesterday. And so hopefully that will happen. I have been, as you mentioned, I was former editor of the North American Review. Most recently, I just quit being the editor of the journal Starline, which is the print journal of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Poetry Association. I just finished my last issue of that, and so anyway. I guess that's all I can think of at the moment. Still teaching. Still teaching at the University of Northern Iowa and teaching a lot online, as Luisa was mentioning earlier.
That's a lot. Luisa, what about you?
Yeah, so there's a new book coming out, and I am still writing at least a poem a day, as Vince mentioned. I've been doing this for more than 9 years running now, no matter what happens. So I am also trying to pull another manuscript from these poems and looking at them through all kinds of different lenses. Like many of us, I've also been writing pandemic poems. Where that's going to go, I don't know, but it's sort of part of the daily kind of thing when we poets pay attention to what's happening to our immediate world and also the world around that world. So I don't know exactly where this is going, but it's all good, I think. I would like to embark on writing a full-length book of essays. I think I have a couple already, so let's see what happens.
Thank you. And Tony?
Yeah, my new short story collection's coming out. It's called Catching Crabs and More. No, I'm just kidding. I'm working on a novel. It's called Fillmore Flip. It's about it's kind of based on my family history in the Fillmore in San Francisco. I was named the Carl Sandburg Writer in Residence down here in North Carolina. In fact, his residence is only about a mile from where I live, but since COVID hit, it's been postponed, and I don't even know if it's even going to happen now. It's going to depend on what happens in the coming months. So.
Thank you so much, everyone. Luisa, Melinda, Tony, and Vince, and Commissioner Al, it's such an honor to have you read for us this afternoon. I have a pre-recorded video of Aileen Tabias, which I will play in a bit, but I just want to introduce Georgette Howington, a Filipino-American poet, UC Davis naturalist, and environmental writer. Georgette?
Sorry.
Are you here?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Aileen. This is such a thrill to me. And I can't say how much it is, because in the years that I've been a poet, which is only 5 years as a published poet, I haven't met any Filipino poets. So it's like, hey, I feel like I've arrived, because I've met all of you. The poem that I'm going to read is a COVID poem, and it's about my mom. My mom is from Pampanga province, and as you all know, that's if you're from Pampanga, you can cook, right? My mother's food was always a very important part of our family, always. In fact, my cousin called the other day, who's a nurse, and my mom's been sheltering in. My mom's 87. And my cousin said, "Oh, Auntie, this is so terrible. I hate the COVID virus situation." And my mom says, "Oh, don't worry, Hazel." She says, "I'll make you sinigang when this is over." That was my mom's response. So anyway, this is a poem called Not As Bad As War, Not Bad As War, and Aileen actually published it on her e-zine online. So it's about my mom. My mother stirs sweet rice pudding on the stove, her walker within reach. Scent of coconut and vanilla remind me she's from Pampanga province, where they say the best cooks are from. She's sheltered in her home for a long time now. I'm her only visitor. This is to keep you safe, I say, but she stays in her pajamas all day now, sits in her chair, staring into space with memories, except when she cleans or cooks. Stirring the bubbling rice, she tells me about when 12 years old, they were forced to leave their house. She remembers too clearly. They lived in secret hiding places for weeks, bombs exploding, fighter planes overhead, kerosene lamps, canned rations, mangoes and sweet potatoes she and her sister dug up in the old farms at night. And when caught, ran fast over bodies on the road, bodies in the field, stumbling over bodies in the square, sometimes knowing the face or that hand or those shoes, falling over a body, landing on unforgiving earth. Pudding done, she ladles me a bowl and we sit to eat. She says a prayer of gratitude and says, "This is not bad as war." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Georgette. Now, for a special treat, Aileen Tabios has pre-recorded a reading for us. We couldn't make Zoom work owing to Aileen's location, but ever supportive, she agreed to do this. Aileen Tabios is an award-winning poet and the author of over 60 collections of poetry, fiction, essays, and experimental biographies from publishers in 10 countries and cyberspace. Let's take a listen.
A reading of Filipino-American writers. How lovely. And so I present myself with other Filipino writers, and I will read a poem that I wrote with Nick Carbo, who's standing right behind me, entitled Ifugao Red. Wings flare, hawk soars as if the sky is Ifugao red, and her wrists shake with 7 silver bracelets, each dangling a stone etched with memories formed as feathers, teardrops, arrowheads. The sound of her grandmother crushing gabi leaves for a spell fills the room. The window persists with its lack of your face, supplanting the pumice stones during the monsoon season in Pampanga. After tasting salt through her tears, why did you open your pores to the temptress's curved copper tongue? Does the witch paint heavy verbs on your thighs, boulders like ravage, pillage, or despoiled? Peel off their signs for sweetness. Her damp eyes walking to the front mahogany door to answer your wing beats discerned through the breeze. To arrive home is to release your armor, dropping it on ancient terrazzo.
That was really sweet. Thank you so much, Aileen. Now I'm delighted to introduce our next reader, eminent Filipino-American author, Almira Astudillo Gil. Almira? Okay, I'll call on our next reader, LA-based poet and educator, Christian Lozada.
Hi everybody. Since Vince and Tony were talking about crabbing in their poems, I was like, ooh, I actually thought of this one that I have that's kind of similar. Between knowing and believing. Us kids would catch fish from the pier in Long Beach, ignoring safety and signs. The fish were poisoned, DDT. We were too desperate or greedy to care. Dad brought us to catch, to feed, to fill the space between parenting and isolation. And the fish we didn't eat, we sold to family. Always the best, the biggest, coupled with the kinds most poison. I wonder if they bought from us from pity, 4 latchkey boys in a black neighborhood, and whatever stories Dad told, or did whatever stories Dad told, or did they buy from us from need? First generation immigrants grasping for tastes, for home tastes, home experiences, home. Looking at that memory from my Spanish style windows that separate and silence the noise from that neighborhood, the noise from that pier, the sound of Dad's voice going on 30, 15, and 5 years now. It's as if those fish, the ones we ate, the ones we sold, and the poison in them made the shell we call blood soft, thin, and brittle. But we moved up, away, and out.
Thank you, Christian. That was really powerful. Thank you so much. Our next reader is Almira Astudillo.
Hi, I apologize in advance. There seems to be I apologize. There seems to be a lack of synchronization between my video and audio. So let me just go straight to the poem. Mangoes. Over a tablecloth rubbed clean of its former gaiety, I reach for a mango, sunburst orange flesh, cradled in a golden crucible, sublime in ripeness. My mother rose early to pluck the favored fruit, leaving me in bed to dream a little longer. Nothing comes between me and my mango. A fly has been waiting on a cracked saucer, feet clicking with anticipation. It is hot in the room. My eyelids sweat as I scrape the mango down to its bitter skin. There is more than my mother's mottled hand presenting another. This act, captured in a hollow space of morning, transcends all, rising above the heat, the captivity of years, the ambiguity of love. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Almira. Such an honor. Thank you. Our next reader is Cynthia Buiza, Executive Director of the California Immigrant Policy Center. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you, Aileen. Thank you so much for doing this, as I always tell you, for feeding our souls with your work. And so grateful to be in the company of my favorite Filipino-American poets and artists. Thank you for taking the time. I'm going to read a poem that feeds a different kind of hunger. Because one of the things that I realized in living in lockdown is it sharpens different kinds of hunger. So this one is about either a hunger for deliverance or redemption, and especially dedicated to men who love women and women who are trying to love themselves even better. Paghuhulus. Paghuhulus is the act of tears giving birth to a woman. The liquid pours out of her, amniotic sac exploding. A spit of blood, a foam of flowers, the right amount of fear and outrage and loathing for her sex and its cages. Ferrante whispers in her ears, trust your strangeness, make love to it, make it pregnant, give it birth, the yes to the yes. Walk away from that gnarly, withered woman, buried in so much mud. Take your roots with you to another land made anew by the fires raging now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Poignant as ever. And I wanted to wish you a happy birthday. Our next reader is Ellen Taleon, a Writers International Network Emerging Poet Awardee from Alberta, Canada. Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you, Aileen. I do appreciate this opportunity to listen to a lot of great Filipino American poets. So sorry to be out of place. I'm from Canada, but I'm from the Philippines. I hope that counts. So I actually realized I have probably I'm not a prolific writer. I have no poem about food. So I asked Aileen if it's okay to share a poem about the pandemic, because we're on lockdown, right? So basically it's kind of like the feeling of being claustrophobic at home and stuff like that. And I'm in Canada, so 2 weeks ago we still had snow. So that's kind of like the background of the poem, like being cooped up inside and having nowhere to go. So the title of my poem is Hourglass. So I'll start now, sorry. The wind howls outside like a banshee, powered by its own roar, flailing against the window panes, to no avail, reaching no one. Like mad hope dashing its tail, gnashing its teeth on the roof tiles, clacking and shrieking with deafening intentions, but not loud enough, so it seems. It touches no one. The sun beating its rays so fiercely on the glass panes, tinted by shadows and lines of birds and clouds in disarray, warms no one, awakens no one. Blinding whiteness outside deters the weak of heart from venturing, its dazzling panorama numbing the eyes, frosting the soul. Like time running out in the hourglass, it doesn't bother me, knowing I can always turn it upside down. To restart the countdown, there is nowhere else to go. That's all. So sorry, it's so short. Thank you.
So much, Ellen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final reader is Aina Carino, 2019 Kundiman Fellow and finalist in the Jake Adam York Prize. Welcome, Aina.
Hi. Thank you, Aileen, for asking me to be on this. I have two poems, if that's okay. This first poem is called Bitter Melon, and I'm sure many of you know the ampalaya. A lot of Filipinos or even Southeast Asian communities have eaten this really bitter vegetable growing up. Anyway, I'll just start reading it. Bitter melon. Balsam pear, wrinkled gourd, leafy thing raised from seed. Pungent goya, ampalaya, cut and salt at the sink. Spoon pulp from bumpy rind. Brown half moons in garlic and sparking mantika. Like your nanay did, like your lola did, like your manang braving hat parsyak, you'll wince. You'll think of the taste of your own green body. Mapait ang lasa. Your sneer, masakit dugot laman. It hurts, the smack of bitter. Yes, you'll remember how much it hurts to nick your thumb as you bloom heat and acid, sili at sukang puti. To grow up glowering in half-light, to flesh out and plod through your own grassy way, unfurl your own crush of vines. After you tip it onto a mound of steamed rice, as you chew, the barb of it will hit the back of your throat. Look at yourself, square. You used to snarl at moths, start small blazes in entryways. Wood chip fires, flaking paint. Look, tignan mo, see your lip curling in the glint of your bowl. Unruly squash, acrid vegetable, you'll flinch. You'll want to see nothing, taste like nothing. But when you disappear your meal, when you choke on the last chunky morsel of rice, you'll slurp thirsty for more, a saccharine life. Huwag mo akong kalimutan, you'll plead. Taste me, taste me. And I just have one more for you. It feels good to cook rice. It feels heavy to cook rice. It feels familiar, good, and heavy to cook rice. When I cook rice, it is because hunger is not just an emptiness, but a longing for multo, the dead who no longer linger. 2 fingers in water, I know just when to stop, right under the second knuckle. In the morning, chew it with salted egg. In the evening, chew it with salted onion. At midnight, eat it slovenly with your peppered hands, licking, relishing each cloud morsel, sucking greedy as if there will no longer be any such thing as rice. Good is not the idea of pleasure. Rather, it is the way I once tripped, spilled a basket of hulls and stones onto soil, homely sprinkle of husks as if for a sending off. How right it was, palms brushing the chalk of it, swirls rising in streaking sun. Heavy is not the same as burden. Rather, it is falling rice as ghostly footfalls, trickling mounds scattered on wood. My dead lolo in compression socks, my dead lola in red slippers scuffing, and a slew of yesterday's titos and titas, their voices traveling to me, tinny, ringing, as if from yesterday's nova. Familiar, just what it sounds like. Family, blood, home, marrow, bone, grit, calcified memories of things that feel good and heavy. Calcified, as in made stronger by mountain sun, only to have them crumble after enough time has passed, just like the mountain forgot what it used to be. Still, it feels good to cook rice. It feels good to eat rice, even by myself, and it feels familiar to know. With each grain I swallow, I strap myself to my own heavy hunger. Thank you.
Thank you, Aina. What a powerful way to end our poetry reading and feasting this afternoon. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Please support Filipino poets by purchasing their books, and please support the Filipino food movement. Thank you. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay.
Thanks, Aileen.
Thank you, Aileen.
Thank you,
Aileen.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Aileen. Thanks, everyone.
Happy birthday, Cynthia.
Happy birthday.